A lot of people watching this are agents, flippers, contractors, or have W-2 jobs. They already know about development. So what's actually stopping them from making the jump?
I tell you, it is not money, it's not knowledge, it's not risk, it's identity. The number one thing stopping people from starting in development is they don't see themselves as a developer. So it's the agent that thinks they'll develop someday instead of owning it and just getting started and presenting themselves at events as a developer. Hey, I'm a developer agent, I'm a developer contractor. That is the number one thing. The someday thinking is a trap. I remember Andrea, she flipped over 1,000 flips and has a master's degree, but she still needed that mental shift to own that she is a developer. Another member, Noe, he is a contractor and is managing multiple construction projects, but he didn't see himself as a developer yet either, right? So just that mental shift is really what's keeping people to then start taking action towards learning the skill set. The skill gap isn't what's stopping people, it's the identity gap. So it's truly identity, skill set, a deal, and then money follows.
What do you mean by identity gap? What does that actually look like in real life?
On every demo call, we see 4 types of people and all of them have the same problem. First, the agent. Cameron, one of our members, is at a 91-9 commission split. And that's elite. Most agents would kill for that type of split. But the ceiling is built into the math. That's tough to negotiate a lot of times, but there's only so much you negotiate. That's what she told me too. And the ceiling is really built into the equation. So there's not really any more money that she can make on any given deal. One more listing doesn't change the math. Second, the flipper. We have another member that's flipped for 18 years, making anywhere from $13,000 to $30,000 on a deal. But it's the same plans, same surprises, same ceiling. And he shared with me that he just was getting bored. And boring isn't a mood, it's a signal. It's your brain telling you that you've outgrown what you're currently doing. Third, the GC or engineer. Another member, David, has an engineering background, very good on anything ground down, just not ground up. He's taking care of a piece of the deal versus being in control of the whole entire development deal. He knows engineering inside out, but engineering is just a piece of development, and development is the whole thing. So there's just this tiny bit of an identity gap. And fourth, the W-2s. Don, who is in Chicago, he was saying, well, I've invested in rentals and I was hoping that these rentals are going to get me out of my tech job. Another member, Mario, said, well, I make so much money for all these other companies. The reality is that all of these W-2s have in common that they're making someone else rich and they're prioritizing. These are people that are building someone else's dream while they put their own dream on pause. These are 4 different roles, same ceiling, but it's the title on their business card that's holding them back.
So you're saying these are all successful people who are already in real estate and they're still stuck?
Correct. These are not beginners, and that's the part most people miss. One of our members, Meg, she's managing a 350 unit per year hedge fund operation, meaning that every year they're buying 350 units. And another member is building for a company $1 to $3 million homes. So they have the skills in some ways, a piece of the developer skill set, but they just don't have the full process, right? But most importantly, they just don't have that identity yet of saying, okay, all right, I'm a developer, I'm gonna do this. And that's the biggest piece that people are missing.
So what does it actually look like when someone makes that shift?
Let me tell you about Chris. I think his story is very much all about identity. He is an amazing wholesaler, agent, and investor, but he didn't see himself as a developer. So he did a bunch of wholesale deals, made good money, did a lot of deals, but he didn't really build that long-term initial skill set as a developer. He wasn't in charge of the full new construction development process. So once he actually shifted his identity to seeing himself as a developer inside, something clicked for him in the academy. He started seeing himself as a developer, and he went and changed his Google business page to saying developer and realtor, which that's such a small change, you think, but it's everything, because that change of identity is what then attracted so many more deals, development deals. It's everything, because once you put yourself out there publicly as a developer, you also hold yourself to it, right? So now he developed 5 units in East Nashville. He also kept 1 or 2 as a rental and then sold the rest. And it's huge that now he's pulling in more and more development deals. And so again, that's just that identity shift that needed to happen, right? You can't force an identity shift, but you can create the environment where it naturally happens. It starts with proximity. When you're actively in a room with people developing, it stops being about something that other people do. Mario shared with me, when I saw what other people are developing, I thought I can do this too. That moment doesn't happen by watching just YouTube videos at night. It's good that you're watching this. However, you need to surround yourself with people that are actually doing it. So then the next thing is you take real action. Find someone who's actively running a due diligence, talking to realtors, to lenders, to investors. Get yourself out of the researching phase. Adrienne shared with me that she's always wanted to do her own, and the Academy didn't give her the desire. The Academy gave her the framework to act on it. And finally, language is a huge part of that identity shift. People start talking differently. They go from saying, I want to get into development, to I'm actively working on a deal. Lisette shared with me she wanted to wake up with purpose. And that moment was actually a shift of her seeing development as just an idea versus now development being her life goal. Proximity, action, and language. 3 triggers, 1 outcome.
You mentioned proximity. Can you give me another example of someone who made this shift because of the people around them?
Yeah, Mario has the construction background, managing large-scale properties on a day-to-day basis. And in his own words, he told me, I make so much money for my company, when in fact I know for 1,000% I can be doing this for my own. So what changed? He got into a room, seeing other people doing it, and realized that he actually has a lot more knowledge, even just starting out. And all of a sudden, everything changed. His identity changed. And he thought, okay, all right, I am a developer. Once he got into the room, seeing other members doing deals, he realized he has actually an amazing starting point. And his whole excuse evaporated. And the identity shifted to him seeing himself as a developer, and that's when he took action. And look what happened then. He found a deal, bought the land for $40,000 in cash, and is all in now, $220,000 in the deal. He's looking to sell it at $325,000. He's about to finish it. So he's going to be making about $100,000 on that first deal. So he's actually getting really close with his first deal to quitting his W-2 job. How powerful is that? How much would your life change if you were to make another $100,000 per year? And keep in mind, he started his first development project while keeping his W-2 job. I know a lot of people are scared, thinking they have to leave their W-2 job in order to get started, but it's absolute BS. You can start in development while keeping your W-2 and that safety net. And so now he brings his 17-year-old son to the job site and is actively building generational wealth, and not just like someday. The identity shift goes from, can I do this, to why am I not doing this?
What about the people watching this who are thinking, I'm not ready to call myself a developer yet. They haven't done a deal. How can they claim that identity?
This is probably the most important thing I'll say in the entire video. You don't start becoming a developer after a deal. You become a developer the moment you decide to follow the process. A manager is not calling themselves a manager after they've completed managing a full project. They're gonna be saying in the beginning of the project, hey, I'm the project manager. So just really think of that. Keeping that identity forefront is so important. I work with a member who says, I see a deal everywhere, but he can envision a new construction development, any kind of tear down he's passing by. And in his mind, he is a developer, but he's not really giving himself the permission yet to act on it. We have another member who is a general contractor and already is doing 80% of a development deal, but he doesn't own a deal yet because he hasn't really given himself the permission yet to see himself as a developer.
You came from Germany. You didn't have any of the advantages people here have. When did you start seeing yourself as a developer?
I started seeing myself as a developer and calling myself a developer the moment I started networking for deals and investors. I didn't have any advantages. In fact, I was an immigrant figuring out real estate in a country where I didn't have a track record or credit history or a safety net. And even when I was doing deals, there was a voice saying, am I good enough to do this? But at the end of the day, I didn't have a choice. It was either get it done or go home. The shift happened for me when I stopped looking at what I didn't have and started thinking about what I really wanted to build. And I remember driving by Dirt and seeing the buildings, the units, and the whole project from start to finish without even having a shovel put in the ground just yet. And that was really the moment when things changed for me. And I saw that identity of myself being a developer. If I could make the shift from scratch in a country where I had nothing, you can make that shift from where you are right now. You have credit, you have the income, you have a head start that I didn't have. The only thing you're missing is the decision.
What changes in someone's life when they finally make this shift? Like beyond the money, what actually changes?
3 things change when you start the game. First, you gain purpose, you get control, and you build legacy. Purpose development isn't a career upgrade, it's an identity upgrade. For example, Lisette, she said she wanted to wake up with purpose, and development really gave her that. That's now her mission, right? She sees herself as a developer. With purpose, you stop asking, how do I make more money? But you start asking, what do I want to build? And second, with development, you get more control. Agents wait for clients. Flippers react to what's behind the walls. And developers, they design the outcome before even breaking ground. That shift from reactive to intentional changes how you carry yourself, how you make decisions, and how you see risk. The third thing that changes is legacy. You start building generational wealth. As I mentioned earlier, Mario said he's doing this for his son. Percent of our demo call prospects mention wanting to build legacy. So it's a huge reason of why people start development, right? And it hits different when your plans have your name on it and you're able to drive by buildings and you know you have built them and you can share that with your family and your kids. With development, you stop chasing a paycheck and start building something that outlasts you.
Last question. If someone watching this has been telling themselves, I'm just a flipper or I'm just an agent for years, what's the one thing you'd say to them right now?
Stop adding just in front of your title. You're not just an agent, you're not just a flipper. You're a developer who hasn't started yet. Chris was initially a wholesaler and is now leading acquisition calls in the academy. Reggie and Andrea did so many flips before and they decided to step into something bigger, right? Now they're actively developing. Mario, he worked as a W-2 and is now doing his build. He's almost done. He decided to build generational wealth. So it all starts with that one decision to see and call yourself a developer. They didn't get a degree. They didn't wait for permission. They made a decision. If you're ready to make that decision, download my free roadmap that I've put together for you. The link is in the description, or DM me, start on Instagram, and let's talk about what your first project can look like.